Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi and you know what time it is, and we're gonna get our midweek magic on. This week's midweek magic is going to be a bit of a two-parter because we're going to be discussing the brand new Alchemy Ixalan set from our unique budget perspective, as well as the midweek magic event Alchemy Cascade. And boy, do we have an abusive borderline deck for you this week that really should be zero wildcards for most people following the plan, and doesn't require any Alchemy-only cards to put together. But before we get into all that, allow me to do the awkward thing and promote the channel. A while back, one of my viewers was kind enough to point out that we are the only channel putting out timely midweek magic content. So be sure to subscribe right here at the Planeswalker Stronghold for all of your future midweek magic needs, because we will be bringing you a deck list or strategy every single week. So what do you say we put all this aside and just get to that? So starting things off with an economic perspective on the new set, and the first thing I really want to get out of the way is I don't really recommend the Premier Alchemy drafts. They're just not very efficient for adding Alchemy cards to your collection, which is kind of the point. Not only do they have all the problems of Premier draft value challenges to begin with, but each pack only has one of the new Alchemy cards, and if anybody else in your pod is drafting for that value, you're really not going to get very much here. Now, believe me, I know Alchemy is not for everyone, and I certainly don't usually recommend buying packs as your main pathway to adding cards to your collection. But if you are looking to do Alchemy, packs really are the way to build your collection. And my best advice is to aim for getting a playset of the uncommons as you usually would. And to do that with this small set is aiming for about 28 packs. So if you were to buy the 20-pack Alchemist bundle that is usually offered, and your 3 free packs that we expect in our inbox with every new set, that means you're probably buying about 5 additional packs to fill out not only that uncommon playset, but a good chunk of the rares and mythics available out of this set. And not to mention a handful of wildcards to help you fill out the gaps in your interest. And now let's take a more in-depth look at exactly what we're getting in this set, and in particular what is going to be of interest for us as budget players. While this set certainly makes good use of keywords like perpetually, boons, conjure, seek, spellbook, all those things we've come to expect and in some cases love about Alchemy, the biggest and newest thing going on here is a new riff on intensity, that being chorus cards. The idea here being that each chorus card intensifies all other cards with the chorus subtype, making for some potentially very powerful build concepts. Alchemy Ixalan really does a fantastic job of scratching the itch of the tribal aspects that many veteran players felt like the Premier Lost Cavern set was missing. All of the tribes, be it dinosaurs, pirates, or vampires, really get a nice little tribal typal synergy boost. But the one that really gets the most is Merfolk, getting multiple cards, 2 of which are uncommons, making this a potential budget powerhouse. Merfolk might actually be better in Alchemy than it is in Standard. Merfolk only gets better and more budget friendly in Historic with the addition of the fantastic Shoreline Scout, where the investment of a uncommon wild card will not only give you a decent 1/1 Merfolk for 1, but will also give you access to one of the best dual lands ever printed in the game, be it Alchemy or paper. And of course, Historic is ripe with merfolk, including multiple lords at uncommon and a tutor as well. As you can see, normally Alchemy is very packed with impactful uncommons, but my personal favorite is the Landlore Navigator. For 2 mana, you get a 2/1 Orc Pirate, so some relevant creature type there. Whenever it attacks, you create a map token. At the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more artifacts entered the battlefield under your control this turn, conjure a card named Thieving Magpie onto the battlefield. So this single uncommon also gives you access to play with another uncommon and a card draw powerhouse, Thieving Magpie. 4 mana, 1/3 flyer. When it deals damage to an opponent, you draw a card. And frankly, it's not too hard to trigger the Navigator's instep. By swinging with it, you create a map token, and that gets you halfway to the 2 artifacts having entered the battlefield. Of course, if you have 2, it just takes care of itself, and you'll get double triggers off of that. And really, in any sort of Pirates deck or blue deck right now for Ixalan, having 2 artifacts enter in the same turn is not at all difficult. Now, all of these new Alchemy cards are going to add a lot of variety to this week's Midweek Magic, where we'll be featuring Alchemy Cascade, meaning the first time you cast a spell each turn, you'll get to cast another less expensive card from your library without paying its mana cost. And as the fine folks at Wizards put it, what a bargain. All we'll need is a 60-card Alchemy deck to do this. And while the new set certainly brings a lot of things, I think the most powerful thing we can do is lead into this Cascade mechanic with the Discover mechanic, which has recently been so powerful that it caught a banning in Pioneer, but no such banning or adjustment in Alchemy. So what do you say we take a look at the deck? Now, before we start talking about today's deck, I do just want to kind of put a verbal footnote out there, if you would. I am recording this several days before the pending December ban and restricted announcement. We have been told to expect no changes to Standard and several other paper-only formats. We have been told to expect specific changes in Pioneer and Modern, and the changes in Pioneer will most likely be mirrored by the Arena team in Explorer. So none of those, in theory, should change what we're expecting for Tuesday's Alchemy-based event. However, we have not been given any indication of any kind of rebalances or bannings for Alchemy, so we don't know what's going to happen at this particular moment. So the deck that you ultimately download from this video may have some changes to it, representative of any Alchemy changes that they make, but again, we're not expecting any. I think this deck is going to run 100% the way we expect it to. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Izzet Value. Now, this event, of course, is allowing us access to the Cascade mechanic for the first spell that we cast each and every turn. And I think that's awesome. I think there's some great things we can do with it. And of course, my first thought is the easiest way to abuse that is to combine it with the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Discover mechanic. And we're running a boatload of Discover cards, including one each of the hidden lands in the appropriate colors. We're also running a one of Zoetic Glyph. I would run more, but there's not a huge amount of artifacts in this, so I don't want to get bogged down with that in my hand if we don't have an artifact to enchant. Of course, 4 of Atali's Favor. We've got 3 Curators of Sun's Creation, because what's better than cascading and discovering, if not cascading, discovering, and discovering again? Of course, we've got everyone's favorite Geological Appraiser, 4 mana, 3/2. When it ETBs, you cast it and discover 3. So really good stuff. We've also got a single copy of Daring Discovery, and then a single copy of Trumpeting Carnosaur, which, of course, if you cast the actual dinosaur, it discovers for 5 when it ETBs. Now, beyond that, I tried to keep the rest of the deck very, very budget friendly. Of course, most of these are your commons and uncommons from your Lost Caverns of Ixalan. These shouldn't really be too hard to fill in. I think the only thing I am missing on this particular account is 1 or 2 Geological Appraisers. Trumpeting Carnosaur, of course, is part of the jump-in play decks, the mono red from LCI. So having one of those is certainly not out of hand there. Beyond that, the mana base is very, very simple, mostly basic, slanted towards mountains, because as you can see, the deck is very red-centric. 3 islands, 12 mountains. We've got everyone's favorite Izzet land from the new player experience, Sheban Reef. A couple of Swiftwater Cliffs, just to give you a little bit more fixing. Captivating Crossroads, the rare of choice for your mana needs in Alchemy, and then of course the Thran Portal, both of those as single copies, Thran Portal being an ideal semi-dual land for every single deck that you'll want to play for the next year or two. Beyond that, we've got Monstrous Rage from last season, Shock from your new player experience, Ginger Brute from last season, 2 copies on that. That's a couple of those artifacts that we talked about. Felden is from your new player experience, as is Gitu Ember Coiler. We've got Ratcatcher, 2 of those from last season, Lightning Strike. Pretty easy common to have come by. I don't think you've got any of these in your new player experience, if memory serves. But this is a 4-of common that most people should be pretty comfortable adding to their collection if they need to. Beyond that, we've got your Chrome Host, a Seed Shark that, again, as you cast spells, and when you discover you're casting that spell again, you get to incubate additional times, just adding to the value equation on board. And this deck is a little vulnerable to things like wipes, so having that Chrome Host out for a couple of turns, building up some incubators, allows you to immediately go to guns again. As you transform those incubator tokens, they can immediately swing as long as they've been on the field through your untap, upkeep, draw. Fire Action Dragon Engine is just a very nice value engine. Not only is it a fantastically efficient creature, but you can unearth it from the graveyard if you need to. Pseudo card advantage. Speaking of pseudo card advantage, Urbrax Forge gives you a creature every single turn. Again, giving you a little bit of insurance away from things like board wipes. Godric, Cloak Reveler, is from the Jump-In collection, a 3/3 haste. It gets even bigger, pumps your dragons, things like that if need be. I think everybody's familiar with that. Also, an Alchemy card from your new player experience, Tomakal's Phoenix, Flying Haste. It can return over and over again from your graveyard, just adding to that value perpetuity. Burrell and Kari Zeb, nice efficient creature, legendary, from your new player experience. Also creates a monkey token, which can feed things like Godric, as does Urbrax Forge. Flame of Anor, another Alchemy only card that you already own because it's from your new player experience. 3 mana instant, which of course can still trigger Cascade. If you control a wizard, as you cast the spell, you may choose 2. And your exciting choices are target player draws 2 cards, destroy target artifact, or deal 5 damage to target creature. All of these options are pretty spectacular. And if you'll forgive me, I'm going to jump over here real quick and talk about Gandalf the Grey. Also, from your starter new player experience, another legendary creature, 3/4, and he happens to be a wizard, as is relevant to the aforementioned Flame of Anor. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one that hasn't been chosen. You may tap or untap target permanent. Gandalf the Grey deals 3 damage to an opponent. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, choose new targets, or put Gandalf on top of its owner's library. And usually that last one is a bit of a detriment, but you might be able to finagle your Discover to immediately bring him back into play, or at the very least you get to cast him again and Cascade potentially off of that casting. And oh yeah, that goes whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, whether that is Cascade or Discover, you are still casting those spells. Tap and untapped target permanent is just really, really nice. 3 damage, spectacularly good. And don't forget, he's legendary, which of course matters for end roll Flame of the West, a legendary artifact equipment. I think a lot of people are familiar with this, but just in case you're not, equipped creature gets +3/+1. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, create 2 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, forgive me. If that creature is legendary, instead create 2 of those tokens that are tapped and attacking. This just becomes a 1-card win con. They basically have to wipe your board in order to deal with this. Very, very difficult. And we do have some legendary creatures in here. Felden in here. We've got Godric as well. Burrell and Gandalf all in there, filling those legendary slots. And last card we're going to talk about is Rampaging Raptor, 4 mana, 4/4, Trample Haste. It has a not quite fire breathing. And when it deals damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player protects. So all in all, the entire idea here behind this is just value on top of value on top of value. Things like Ratcatcher give you card advantage because you can cast it for pest problems, Cascade into potentially one of these other cards. And then the next turn you can cast it for a second time and Cascade potentially into one of these. Virtually everything in the deck that is instant or sorcery, like Shock and Lightning Strike, those 2 particular spells were chosen because if your opponent doesn't have a creature to target using the removal, you can go face on those. Flame of Anor, it does only target a creature for damage, but you've got 2 other modes there to choose from. Very, very nice. Everything here basically casts very effectively off Discover or Cascade. The one area where you might have issue is the Monstrous Rage or Atali's Favor, if for some reason you don't have a creature to enchant. But in the case of Discover, of course, you can always put the card in your hand. It's only on the Cascade that you would potentially lose those spells. And for the massive amount of value that we're dealing with here, it's well worth those few corner cases that just might not quite work out. And before we wrap things up, just a couple things I wanted to cover. So as you build this deck with your individual collection, of course, you are going to have different card assortments and things like that. One thing I wanted to discuss was Zoetic Glyph. Although the deck does not run a lot of main deck artifacts, do keep in mind that your incubator tokens from your Chrome Host Seed Shark are in fact artifacts, and if you use Zoetic Glyph on them, they become 5/4s, and you never even have to animate them. Be forewarned, if you animate it after the glyph is on there, the glyph is going to fall off. That's the way state-based effects are going to work. And of course, Ginger Brute has the potential to go pseudo-unblockable. So a 5/4 pseudo-unblockable is something your opponent is going to have to deal with. The Zoyawa's Justice, forgive me, I'm not sure how to actually pronounce that, but it doesn't matter because it's a pretty terrible card. Probably not worth running. Of course, if your individual collection happens to sport a Brass's Tunnel Grinder, pretty good stuff here, particularly once you flip it. Any spell that you cast using mana from this gains Discover. It's just a little bit ridiculous. Hit the Mother Lode is just too high of mana, in my opinion. I wouldn't run a whole lot of Daring Discoveries. We are an aggro deck, but not entirely. Buried Treasure is one of those pretty easy, common filler cards if you need to fill a couple slots from missing things. Pretty nice. I don't love Swashbuckler's Whip. I think it's kind of a win more. I don't really love Dig Site Conservator, but it's not bad. Again, something that you might want to use to fill some slots. And the Inner Sun, spells you control can't be countered at the beginning of your end step. Discover 5. If you've got this bad boy, you might as well toss it in there. And you might want to consider splashing white if you have some of the Sunborn, or like this particular account where you have one or more Quitaris. Just a generally good card here. When you cast a spell from exile, like when you Cascade or Discover, it deals 2 damage and you gain 2. I didn't include it in the list because I didn't think it was really reasonable to just expect everyone to have one or more copies of a Mythic, and certainly crafting a Mythic for an event like this is probably not something you want to be doing. And hey, just in case you didn't catch all that, Matt would like you to know that the deck list that we discussed in this video is going to have a link down in the doobly-doo to take you over to Aetherhub, along with a link to any other alternative lists that you might wish to consider. He only asks that you give it a little thumbs up when you're over there checking out the deck list. And I plan on live playing this event on Wednesday at 11 a.m. over on my Twitch channel, so definitely stop in and check it out. Because the Stronghold is so much more than just a YouTube channel, and you can find links to all of our other social media outlets in our profile. Because at the end of the day, we're all budget players. And as a community, we're stronger together. So like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all those things to show a little love. It's appreciated more than you know.